So, hello, Natalie. It's great to see you again. We know you came for our 20th anniversary thing at FaithWorks, our service, and you spoke there. But some of us may not know who you are. So, could you briefly introduce yourself? Not just what you do, but maybe why do you do it as well?
Yeah, sure. So I lead a charity called Jubilee Plus that helps churches mostly across the UK, but a little bit further afield as well, but of all denominations to really engage with poverty in their local settings. We try to help churches get mercy and justice in the DNA, not just as kind of a department of church life, but as something that's just a matter of everyday essential discipleship for all followers of Jesus. Why I do it? I think often people think because I've got a background of poverty myself that I'm motivated by that. And I'm sure that is true to an extent. But actually, what I'm really passionate about is that Jesus calls his followers to care about poverty and to care about injustice and to be actively on the lookout for how we can make a difference to the lives of those who are disadvantaged in any way, marginalized, exploited, oppressed. And so I'm really passionate about those of us who follow Jesus doing what he wants us to do, and the church as a whole being a force for good and a blessing to the communities around us, especially to those who are the poorest in those communities.
Uh, so, I've got the book here, which I can't see it. There we go. Tis you could just about see it, folks. No, you can't. There we go. Anyway, it's called "Tis Mercy All." And I'm really interested in why you focused on mercy, because it's not like it says actually the power of mercy in a polarized world. At the moment, mercy is not one of those words that's really used very much in general public life. And I just wondered why you thought it's so important. And also, that idea of, yeah, it's great, Natalie, but being realistic, it's not going to happen most of the time. So just sort of, can you speak into that as to why you think it's an important concept for us now?
Yeah, I mean, partly because of exactly what you just said, that we don't, mercy is not a word we hear spoken of much these days. And we don't see it much in the world around us. You know, we've got this cancel culture. We've got this kind of, it's not even really three strikes and you're out. In some settings, it's one strike and you're out for life, and that's you done. And obviously, depending what you've done, there's times when that may be the more appropriate and just response. But around us, we see people torn down for all sorts of things that actually shouldn't be fatal in their
Mm.
lives and shouldn't be unforgivable. And we just don't see much mercy. And I think I was particularly struck by when a friend of mine died in a really tragic traffic accident. Her parents wrote to the judge who had said to the guy, the driver who killed my friend, you know, you are facing a prison sentence. When we come back for sentencing, you are going to be put in custody. You know, he caused her death with dangerous driving. But my friend's parents wrote to the judge and said, we are Christians and we'd like you to show mercy. And this was covered by national newspapers. The headline, Death Driver Shown Mercy, by one of the tabloids. Um, and the reason it makes national news is because it's so incredibly rare.
Yeah.
And even for those of us who are Christians, when we hear about that level of incredible mercy, I think if we're honest, we wonder, could I show that level of mercy? Like, I'm not sure that I could. And it's rare for that level of mercy, even among Christians. But mercy is something we are called to. All throughout the Bible, we see things like the prophet Micah in the Old Testament, who says, what does the Lord require of you? But that you would act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. Jesus himself in Luke 6, verse 36 says to his disciples and those listening to him, be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. So
Mm.
I think for me, I was really struck by an absence of mercy in the world around me, but also, and I'm sure we'll get onto this in more detail, a lack of mercy within me.
Yes.
So I recognized the problem wasn't just external to me, the problem was very much internal as well. And yet, when I look at the Bible, I look at the gospel, I look at the message of Jesus, it is one of mercy, where mercy is loving kindness in action towards people who don't deserve it. And not deserving it is actually the key for
Mm.
mercy. It's if someone deserves it, it's actually not mercy, it's something else.
Yeah. So, because it's quite interesting you use that term, because sometimes we can think of mercy like, what's the difference between mercy and say general kindness? Because
Mm.
it's a word we hear quite a lot in society is, oh, they're very kind. What would you, is there a difference to you between those?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, mercy definitely includes being kind, but I think it's so much deeper and broader than that, because kindness, I mean, I used to see this when I was on social media. I'd see all the time people posting things like, be kind to people who are kind to you. And kindness can be an earned thing. You and I are friends, and I hear that you've got a need. Well, I'll be kind to you because I like you. So why wouldn't I be?
Mm.
Mercy is calling us to something far harder and greater
Mm.
and richer than that, which is when you're unkind to me, or when you're ungrateful for my help, or even when you just absolutely do not deserve anything from me. Mercy is when I show you kindness anyway. And so, like I say, it's very much hinging on this idea of what you can't ever deserve mercy, or it's not mercy.
Mm.
Mercy is in many ways the opposite to karma. So, karma would say, if you're good, good things will happen to you. If you're bad, bad things will happen to you. Mercy actually says something that's quite offensive, which is that sometimes the wicked prosper, but actually we're called to even be kind to the ungrateful and wicked. That's in Luke 5, verse 35. And that's a
Wow,
harder thing to hear.
that's really tough, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we'll get on to more of this, but you talked briefly there about how we have to look at ourselves as well.
Mm.
And because the sort of thing I know you've written a book previously about the deserving and the undeserving poor. And it's like
Mm.
we in society would tend to split people up in that way because that's how we throw onto them what we're thinking about ourselves as well. So just dig into a little bit about what you mean by actually we need to look inside about some of this as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, I think the way the kind of society around us operates would be very much, say you come to me and you need help. Say, you haven't got any food, or you can't pay your electric or whatever, and you come to me and you say you need help.
Mm.
I think society would kind of tell us, well, I should find out, why are you in that situation? Like, did you cause it yourself, or was it done to you? And
Mm.
we really like it. I really like it when people are just so neatly categorized into, well, you are just a victim of circumstances, so therefore you are worthy of my help. Or you brought this all on yourself. You made your bed, you lie in it. And I
Mm.
find those kind of binary positions much more comfortable to live with. But what we see in the Bible, what we see in Jesus, is he never seems to categorize people. It's all column A or it's all column B. It always seems to be. And my own experience of being in poverty actually has been, it's a little bit from column A and a little bit from column B mixed together, because we're way more complicated than that. So instead of looking at the person in front of us and saying, do you deserve my help or not?
Mm.
Actually, for the Christian, what we are called to is to look up, look at God. How does he behave? And how he behaves is he always behaves in keeping with his own character, which means your character can't change his behavior.
Mm.
Your behavior can't change how he responds to you. And to be honest, I love this idea, not just about God, but I want to be someone who is kind because I'm a kind person, not because you deserve it or not.
Yeah.
I want to be someone who shows mercy, not because it's got nothing to do with whether you deserve it or not. It's about who I am. So it's about
Mm.
my character being fixed, my character being as much like the God that I worship as it can be. But sadly, I notice it often isn't. And, I mean, even when I was writing a book on mercy, it felt like there were just opportunity after opportunity to realize I don't know how to live this out. Like, it's just
Yeah.
really hard. I mean, I'll give you one example. When I was writing the book, I needed to record some videos like this for work. And I live in a flat. My neighbours upstairs were being really noisy, and they weren't usually noisy, but I don't know what they were doing up there. Like, and it went on for ages. And then the sun started to go down, and I thought, I've got to make these videos while I've got natural light.
Mm.
The lighting in my flat's not great, so I thought I've got to do it now. So I went and knocked on the door, and I said, would you mind just giving me half an hour of quiet just so I can make these 2 videos I've got to make for work? And the guy just went, no. And I was so shocked. And one of my friends said to me afterwards, you've just been around Christians too long because you expected him to say yes. Like, he didn't have to say yes. Of course he didn't.
No.
But I was so shocked. So I sort of just walked away, tail between my legs, back into my flat. And then I thought, no, he kind of meant like, no, maybe it's just how I asked for too long. Maybe I'll get one of the videos done. So I'll just go back and I'll ask him for like 15 minutes. So I went back and I asked him again. And as I could hear him coming to the door swearing, and I thought, oh, this isn't going to go well for me. And basically he just said, no, I'm in the middle of something and I'm not going to stop. So no. And I was like, but it's for work. I really, like, I wouldn't ask. And, you know, I don't normally ask. And he was just like outright no. So I went back into my flat and just noticed straight away, I'm like angry, I'm annoyed. But what I thought is they're trying to sell their flat. So next time they've got a prospective buyer round, I'm going to whack my music up full blast. I'm going to get my revenge. I'll show them a thing or two, you know, teach them that they should have been kind. And I just felt immediately the Holy Spirit just kind of whisper in, like, just in my heart, kind of, no, you're not, because you're a Christian. And I was like, oh, it's so annoying, because, you know, everything within me wanted revenge. And I just think daily there are opportunities like that where I go, my heart internally is not naturally merciful, but I am called to something beyond what currently exists in my heart.
That's a great example. And we can all, yes, there are variations of that where you immediately go into fight mode. Come on, I'll have you, because this is not fair. And that not fair thing comes out a bit, doesn't it? So are there things that you could recommend us, you know, in terms of, because we're thinking about how we can work this out, about looking at ourselves, first of all, before we start trying to show mercy externally, how do we need to work on ourselves? Are there particular things that you would recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really does start as an attitude, doesn't it, as a posture. And so I think, first of all, it starts by noticing what are the things that wind us up and why do they and how do we react? I mean, for me, I could give you any number of examples, from holding a door open for someone who doesn't say thank you, for stopping in the car and went to let someone pass, and when they don't do that polite little hand wave thing. And, you know, there's all sorts of really tiny things that I find wind me up more than they should. And so it starts by kind of noticing that, clocking what's going on in your own heart and mind. And then I think for me, it's about praying, God, help me to be more like you. For me, it's about continually looking at how Jesus treated people in the Bible, you know, reading about him. But it's also having a few friends who I've said, why don't you pull me up on this? When you notice an attitude, something coming out my mouth that doesn't sound very merciful. I mean, the problem is I've written a book on it, so now everyone does this to me all the time. I can't, my friends' kids in particular, like primary school age kids, who will say to me, that's not merciful.
So you just want to punch them in the face then, that they really just sort of
well,
double down on it.
just to prove that I'm not merciful. But I think actually some accountability, like being open to people who you trust, you know, people you're close to, saying to you, oh, that attitude there. But also I think going against our inclinations so much of the time as well, and starting to get in the habit, when I want to be judgmental instead of merciful, then getting into the habit of catching myself and going, no, I'm not going to think like that. I'm not going to have that attitude. And I think for me, it's also whenever I'm critical of someone else's behavior, I often now, because again of these kind of Holy Spirit nudges, try to think, do I do that too? Because I know that often the behaviors that annoy me about other people, I actually recognize. You know, again, a classic example would be in the car when someone cuts me up and I'm like furious about it. But I've cut people up, often not deliberately, but, you know, you think you can nip in further down on the motorway to get to the slip road or whatever. And then you think, oh, who's that joker who's just bypassed all the traffic? And then I'm like, no, that's me sometimes as well. So I think it starts with some honest internal reflection and some willingness to get before God or friends or both.
Yes, that's really helpful. That's really helpful. So if we turn it around now slightly, so as you know, we've talked before, we had John Kirk come to speak to us last year, and he talked about Jesus came full of grace and truth, and trying to hold these two things together, because one of the challenges, I guess, with showing mercy to people is sometimes, and we know, we see it, there are people who try to take advantage of the help that we give, whether that's coming back for the 83rd food parcel or just actually, you know, we talk about empowering people, but actually some people just sit there and wait for stuff to happen. And so how do we, that sort of, how does mercy fit into that sort of conversation?
Yeah, well, I think mercy isn't a soft thing. You know, there's I think a Christmas carol we sing, isn't there, that says mercy mild, and mercy isn't really mild in the Bible. I mean, sometimes we see that mercy in the Bible means being given to the consequences of your actions sometimes. But what it always means in the Bible is that if someone cries out to God in distress, he always responds with compassion and kindness, even when they very much don't deserve it. And so I think for us, that's the balance. It's thinking, first of all, is my heart posture towards this person merciful? Like, do I want the best for them, even if they are taking the mickey, even if they're exploiting, even if they're ungrateful, even if they're entitled, whatever it might be. And that's hard. It's really hard. But actually, that again comes back to this idea of I want to be who I want to be, not have my behavior dictated by the person in front of me. But then mercy also then does look like actually have honest conversations with people. Sometimes mercy looks like saying to someone, actually, I can't give you money because you've told me you're going to spend it on drugs and I don't want to support your drug habit. So mercy doesn't mean you just do whatever the person wants in front of you and then you just don't have any wisdom or whatever. But I think one of the things I find difficult is so often we can talk as if wisdom and mercy are at odds with each other. But actually, even in the Bible, in James's letter, when he describes wisdom, he says it's full of mercy. And I just think that's really interesting. And I think what wisdom does is say, the question isn't, should I help you? The question is, how can I best help you?
Yep.
And I think that is just such a fundamental shift, because it means I assume I'm going to help you, but what I'm going to offer you might vary based on your circumstances, your situation, what might be good for you in the situation. But one of the tricky things about this is with empowerment, that often we think we know what's best for someone.
Yeah.
And we might actually know what's best for them. We might know that giving someone money to spend on drugs isn't the best for them. We probably do know that.
Yeah.
But actually not kind of engaging someone in their own progress actually isn't really empowering, is it? So actually talking to someone and saying, well, what do you think? If you were me, what would you think is the best way to help you? Because at Jubilee Plus, we've done a bunch of focus groups with people who were in poverty and have come out of poverty. And it's really interesting. Like most of them have said, I wish people hadn't given me money back then.
Yeah.
Some wouldn't say that, but we need to be like engaging people in, what do you think I could do that would help you? And but the merciful stance is that my posture is always, I want to help you.
Yes.
So I think that's where the grace and truth comes in.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it fits very well in with this idea, isn't it, of being present with somebody. So not actually just doing and it's something we're trying to be very hot on. It's not a sausage machine. You know, everybody's not treated the same. We're sitting down with somebody and saying, what is your story? And then actually trying to say, okay, what is, as you say, what is the best help that we can give? So the follow-on challenge for us is, where does mercy hit boundaries, i.e. boundaries of our own working life? Because, you know, many of us have got the challenge of, when do we turn off our phones? You know, because there's always someone else, you know, who's going to come through the door. You know, Jesus said you're always going to have the poor with you. I don't think he quite meant it in the sense that we sometimes use that, but it's that idea of, there are a lot of people who need help and a lot of people who need mercy. How does that fit in with how your understanding of mercy is?
Yeah, well, again, I think it's just one of those really interesting things that, like I said about wisdom, often boundaries are kind of pitted against mercy, as if they're somehow not, you know, you're either compassionate or you're boundaried. But actually, I think you can be wholly compassionate and have really good and helpful boundaries that aren't just, because your boundaries aren't just about you. If your boundaries are just about you, then probably that's a bit of looking after number one. It's a bit of, you know, charity begins at home, self-care, a bit of what our world would tell us is most important. But if your boundaries are actually others centered, by which I mean, when you're putting in place your boundaries, you are thinking, if I'm going to help people for the long haul, then I need to be boundaried now so that I'm still doing this in 5 years or 10 years time, or maybe not doing exactly this, but my heart's still soft.
Yeah.
I'm still compassionate. I'm still moved by the stories I hear. Actually, you need boundaries in order to be in it for the long haul. I think that boundaries are merciful as well, because, you know, so for me, as someone who grew up in poverty, I had no idea of boundaries. My upbringing was very chaotic, very dysfunctional. My life today still has traces of chaos and dysfunction, but actually, you know, I'm in a high functioning job. I am able to function well in society. I am able to pay my bills on time. I'm able to keep myself alive. I'm even able to keep a couple of plants alive, which is probably the biggest miracle of it all. But actually, how I learned a lot of those things was through boundaries, not through boundaries which were, we're going to put these boundaries in place so that you learn a thing or two. It was kind of not that kind of top down, you need to learn from us, but just people's wise boundaries for their own lives, their own well-being. So I think things like so for me, my phone goes onto do not disturb from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. every day. It doesn't mean I never use my phone between those hours, but it just means as a general rule. And, you know, I mentor someone who's very, very vulnerable, from a background of poverty, very traumatic background, very chaotic, very dysfunctional. At this point, no kind of job prospects at the moment. It's really struggling with mental health and post-traumatic stress, neurodiversity, like a lot of things in the mix. And she will call me at like 1 a.m. And if she calls enough times, it breaks through my do not disturb. Now, the first couple of times she did it, I answered the phone, thinking it was some sort of crisis. And she'd never done it before. So, you know, I'm thinking this must be important. And both the first two times, both times she was just drunk. And she wanted to tell me she'd got a job, which was amazing news, not news I needed to hear at 1 a.m. Right. And the next time she wanted to tell me that she'd quit the job. I mean, these were 2 weeks apart, and she felt like everyone was really disappointed in her, and she wanted someone to say, I'm not. And so I didn't tackle that in the moment when she's drunk, but I did the next time I saw her in daylight hours, say to her, hey, look, if you're ever in an absolute crisis, like a life or death situation, I would want you to call me at 1 a.m. But if you keep calling me just to tell me news that you could wait until the daytime to tell me, and because you're drunk, then actually what will happen is you'll kind of, you know, we talked about the boy that cried wolf sort of thing. And I said, what will happen is the time you really need me, I won't answer the phone. Yeah. Do you know what? It only took that simple conversation for her to stop phoning me in the middle of the night. It wasn't a big, and I know it's not always that simple, but it's like she got it and she was like, oh, I need to have the credit in the bank. I need to save that middle of the night phone call for when I actually really is an emergency. Yeah. And sometimes people just need to have that conversation and to be helped to see where their actions might be leading. I think me putting in place then that boundary for her has been massively helpful for her, because she was used to people either saying, don't you dare call me in the middle of the night, or being available whenever, whatever, and it, you know, and having, but actually being told here's a boundary by someone who still cares about you, who's still available to you, was really helpful. And I know that's a tiny example, and that often there's a lot more complex things than that at stake, but it's just an example of how I think a boundary was a merciful thing to bring in. Yes. It wasn't an unkind thing, and it stops me getting woken up at 1 a.m, but it also helps her with some life skills, with some taking responsibility, with some thinking it through. And that seems to have worked in that particular instance.
It's a great example. It's a great example. And I think this idea of what is best for the person, and what is best for the person isn't necessarily to keep on saying yes all the time, but actually, as you say, to establish but we're here, we're continuing to be here. So I was just wondering, in terms of, we draw this together, a couple of things. One, are there some specific things in terms of actually doing mercy? Now, obviously, FaithWorks ministries are largely about that, but are there some things which you would see to encourage us to keep on doing?
Yeah, I think keep on being honest about what's going on internally. I think find places, if you haven't got them already, but if you have, then keep cultivating those places where you can say, my heart's getting a bit hard here. I'm a bit frustrated here. This person is driving me crazy, and I think I don't know how to deal with it. So I think that's one thing. I think another thing would be, don't build any one person to you as exclusively. Like, as in, often people, especially I know this from my own background, you want to connect to one person, and that person almost becomes like a savior to you. And I've also been on the other side of that, where I've quite enjoyed the savior
Yeah.
complex. I've quite enjoyed feeling needed and necessary. The truth is, I'm not the savior. None of us are.
Yes.
And so actually finding, connecting the people who might cling to you to others, and you can't always force that. In fact, you always can't force it, but you can start to facilitate something of a broadening out of the network so that they become connected to more than just one person.
Yeah.
But I think keeping soft-hearted, and I think keeping, just be generous when you don't feel like it, be kind when you don't want to be, forgive when you're doing it through gritted teeth, but just
Mm.
keep pressing in that direction, because those things, we cultivate them. They don't happen by osmosis. They don't happen even if we've done a million food bank shifts.
Yeah.
Actually, they're things we have to keep cultivating in our own lives.
Yes. Yes, that's really helpful. And we'll take a bit of time after we've seen this video just to sort of have some conversations about what that looks like for us, and where there are spaces where we can have those sort of conversations about it's getting a bit hard here, folks. Um, just to finish with, Natalie, are there a couple of, so we're going to have a bit of time when the team are going to talk together. Are there any sort of questions that you think it would be good for us to sort of unpack a bit further after we've had this video?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be really interesting to unpack, like, where do we struggle with mercy? I think all of us do. It might be, and this might be a deeply painful thing for some people, because it might be that it's someone in your close family and you just have been so hurt by them, or often worse still, they've hurt someone you love, and that's
Yeah.
really hard. Or it might be a particular group of people. We sometimes demonize whole groups of people, don't we? And can think whole groups of people are awful. It might be political figures we struggle with. It could be, you
Very
know,
topical. Yes.
yeah. It's not necessarily, it could be someone very close, or it could be someone we've never met.
Mm.
But either way, like, where are we struggling to show mercy? Um, I wonder as well if it's worth having a conversation about.
Hello again, Natalie. We lost the signal there for a moment. All the best laid plans and so on. So apologies, many apologies. We lost that. But I think you were just talking about some questions that we could maybe look into about maybe thinking about from our own point of view where we struggle to show mercy to some people or individuals or groups of people. But I think you were going to move on to just one other possible question that would be good for us to think about.
Yeah, I think it would be really worth exploring, like, what does it look like for you guys to show mercy to the person who has come in 83
Yeah.
times for a food bank parcel, or the person who seems to be stuck and unable to come out of their poverty? What does it look like practically then to show them mercy?
Yes, that's a great question. It's a great question. Natalie, I'm hugely grateful for giving up your time. You are the busiest person on the planet, but you are very generous with your time. And so we want to pray that God will give you all you need as you go around the country encouraging others to be there on the front line, to be the good Samaritan, to be the person that people need to have alongside them. And a blessing on you as well, because you have a lot of challenges that you, as a public facing figure that we don't understand, but we're grateful for you giving up the time. Thank you so much. Thank you for all that Jubilee Plus do, and maybe we'll see you one day again down in Bournemouth.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you so much for having me.
It's great. See you again.
Take care.